going to grab my Bible because this stand is too small to put all the things on you have on it. I don't know what Brother Hunter's doing over here. Oh, I know Pastor. He's something else. Amen. Well, I'm glad to be here with you guys this morning. And Pastor Hunter asked me if I could be here with y'all. And what time do you guys usually end here? Okay. Yeah, that's right. Last time you guys told me you guys were used to Pastor Fitz and how long he would take sometimes. So, and yeah, Pastor Hunter asked me if I could come preach with you all this morning, and of course I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. I just got back Friday from Mexico. I got there the 12th of December, and I just came back on Friday from Mexico. And I have to say that it was really hard for me. I didn't want to leave Mexico for a lot of reasons. And I didn't want to have to come back, but I knew I had to. I had to come back because I have a lot of work still to do here before I can go back and be there permanently. And I just want to thank the church for the help that you guys have been. I do receive support from this church, so I do thank you for that. It's been a journey, being able to visit all these other churches and being with different people. And I think that one of the most important things of a church is their help towards missions. Their help towards missions. And I want to talk about that today, but before that, I just want to tell you a little bit of how it went down there in Mexico, because I'll probably put out a letter, but it's not going to be at all close to what I could be able to tell you in person. But we got there on the 12th. I took some friends with me. There was a guy actually at Worth. I don't know if you guys ever met Noah Samford. He's kind of a new guy. He's going to Norris as well. He plays the violin there at Worth, yeah. And so he drives a truck, and he's from Pastor Samford's church there in Kerrville, and now he's a member at Worth. And there was another guy in his church named Joseph. Joseph texted me a few months ago, and he's like, hey, I know you're going to Mexico, and I'd like to go with you on this trip. He said, I want to try something new in my life. And I said, well, you're welcome to go with me, but when we go, we're staying down there. I'm not going to bring you back. It's not like a sleepover, where you can just go find your parents. He's a young guy, so you're just going to have to deal with it. Okay, yeah, I want to go. All right. And then they paved the way for Noah to go. So Noah went as well down there with me. So I took 2 gringos with me. We went down there, and they loved it. They had an awesome time. Joseph, the one guy that went with us, he said, I don't even want to go back to the United States. I just want to stay here. He just really enjoyed the life there. It's so different, You don't shower with warm water there. The plumbing is different. The food is different. The climate is different. And still he was like, I would prefer to stay here than to go back there to the United States. And so they got to go with us, and we went, and I took them to go see, usually I fly into Cancun. And like I said last time, I'm not a missionary to Cancun. But even if I were, there's a lot of need in Cancun. You just think of Cancun like the hotels, that are there. There is so much more to Cancun. And I have a good friend of mine that's a pastor there in Cancun that they have good church. I mean, they have a lot of work, and it's just, there's a lot of need there as well. But I hate Cancun. Like when I'm there, I just want to leave Cancun. I don't want to be in Cancun. I want to go into the villages. And so the area down there that we went down to the 2 states, Quintana Roo and Yucatan. Those 2 states we were there, and one of the things that I wanted to do was there was a lady that we helped. I don't know if you guys remember. I think I showed my video here. Did I show my video here? Yeah, I did. My missionary. Oh, you do have it? No. Well, no, it's fine. Yeah, I think you guys have seen it before. I'm working on another one. Once I have the other one ready, I'll send it over or put it on YouTube or something so you guys can see the new one, the updated one. But anyway, I don't know if you remember that the last video on my missionary video was a little girl with a cleft palate. Do you guys remember that? So that little girl, we went to go see her and her family, her and her mom, and I got to meet her grandfather. And he's a 72-year-old man, healthy as can be. Like, this guy is healthier than I am, and he can do a lot more, probably physically, than I can. And he's just a very healthy man. So he lives basically there in this little village called Petcacab. It has about 1,500 people. But he mostly lives in something called a milpa. And a milpa is kind of like some property that they own where they grow a lot of things. They grow, different foods, a lot of corn or whatever, So he pretty much lives literally off the land. Like this guy lives in a place that has no electricity, no running water, nothing. Like he just lives off the land. And so one of the things I wanted to do was go out there and experience that. And I wanted to go hunting because they go hunting too in those areas. And so we went down there. It was me, Octavio, who is the other guy that is in charge of the clinic down there that I talked to you guys about that my parents have. Me and him, Noah and Joseph. So all four of us went. We got into the back of this little Ford Ranger that had this cage back there to put cattle. So we got into the back and we drove through these horrible, horrible roads for like 2 hours. And we're like getting smacked in the face by these branches. I mean, it was horrible, man. It was crazy. And the old man was back in the back with us, a 72-year-old man. He didn't even have to duck down. He was so short. And so we're just, going, we're talking, and I was talking to him. And, he told me, he said, Tyler, he said, I'm not a Catholic. He said, I don't believe in idols. And he said, I don't even think that works can save you. I think that only Jesus can save you, he was telling me. And so this guy is a very, illiterate man, can't read or anything. And he knows such a truth that a lot of people don't know. And he said, I don't smoke, I don't drink, whatever. And so it was pretty interesting to talk to him and just kind of seeing that there's already, basically there's already a place there that I could just go and start a Bible study with them and get going, Anyway, so we went with them to this. The way that the people down there show their love towards you a lot of times is things like that. They don't have money. They don't have a lot to give you. But say, hey, we want you to come see this property. We want you to come see what we live off of, Or, hey, we want to feed you. And they just feed you and feed you and feed you. And they don't stop feeding you. And it's like, I can't eat anymore, And so this, they're like, hey, so they took us out there. And it was the dad, the father, and then another guy who was a family member of theirs. And then Doña Martina and the little girl and their son. So it was a few of us that went out there. And the property, it's like jungle, it's jungle. They have areas that are cleaned out and stuff where they grow pineapples and all kinds of stuff. And but they have like a little house that's just sticks. It's just made of sticks. And they have like I don't know what you would call them, like kind of like palm-like leaves that cover the top of the house. And then you walk inside, it's literally like sticks. You can see outside. There's just dirt floors. There's rocks in inside of there, and they have like a little place where they put their wood and they make fire so they can eat and whatnot. So it's pretty cool. I mean, like it's just completely no electricity, nothing. So we went out there, and they took me out to go look a little bit at some stuff, and then that night, okay, we're gonna go hunting tonight. We're gonna go hunting. So the sun was down, it was dark, and so we took some little headlamps. And we went out and we started walking the road. They have not like a dirt road, a path, I guess. We started walking. The old man had his rifle and a shotgun, I guess. And then the other guy and my friend Octavio, and I left the two gringos. I left them behind because I didn't want them to go out into the jungle because it was kind of dangerous. And so, we're okay. We go out there and the guy's like, all right, Tyler, come on. And he gets off of the path and he goes into the jungle, like starts walking into the jungle. And I was like, what are we doing, All right. So I just started following. I had some boots that I actually bought my dad got them for me when we go rattlesnake hunting. So they come up here to my knees almost. And so I put that on. I put a long sleeve shirt on and stuff. So just went in there. I just started following this guy. Man, this guy's just walking around like crazy. Like, I can't believe this guy just nuts. I was tired already, I was like, man, I'm just following this guy, looking at everything. I mean, we're looking for eyes, little eyes to see if you see something, you shoot it. And there's eyes everywhere, but it's not the animals. It's the little insects in the rain because it was raining that night. And so it was raining. It was a little bit warm, so my glasses were fogging up. And, we're just walking. I'm trying to follow this guy. It was crazy. It was an experience. I've never had that kind of experience. And we're just walking around, and I just thought, this is how they live. This is what they live off of. And this guy's just walking and looking around. And then all of a sudden, there's like a little swampy area. There's water and there's high grass. And he just gets in there. He just starts walking in there, and I was like, so I said, hey, do you want me to wait for you? And he just laughs, And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to get in. So I just got in, and the water luckily didn't go above the boot, so I was just walking in there, and just, one spot I saw a snake. He walked right past it. I was like, isn't that a snake? And it was in some bushes. It was actually up on the bushes. So even if it bit me, it could have bit me in my thigh or something like that, But I don't know if it was venomous. He said it was, but he just hit it with a stick, and I cut its head off with a machete I had. And so we're just walking around, and we're just going in through there. He's talking to me. I can't even understand what he's saying because he's in front of me. And in one part, he turned off his light, and I turned off my light. And it was incredible, the darkness. It was incredible. I couldn't believe how dark it was. Because with just a little bit of light that you have for the lamp, you can see a lot. And then you turn it off, and nothing. You can't see anything. I mean, it was just crazy. And I was like, does this guy really know where we're going? Like, this is crazy, man. And he's walking, and he's breaking, branches. He's breaking them. He's walking, and he'll break a branch. He'll walk a little bit, and he'll break a branch so he knows where he's going. And I said, do you really know where we're going? He's like, yeah. All right. So I just followed him. I was like, Lord, just please take care of us because this is crazy. We're miles, a few hours away from a hospital. So, just make sure everything goes well. And, we finally got out after, I don't know how long we were in, probably 2 hours or something. And he finally got out into the road. We finally found the road, and we went walking. He knew exactly where we were the whole time, this guy. And so we were just kind of talking and stuff, and it was crazy. It was an experience. I've never had an experience like that. I had to duck down and not get hit by all this stuff and move things out of the way. And man, it was just crazy. And so we went out there. We didn't kill anything. Unfortunately, we didn't get to hunt for anything. And so I went back into the little hut, I guess you could say, and went under and slept on the cot. It was a horrible sleep because I couldn't really sleep well, and I would move around, and my arm would go numb, and man, it was horrible. And then one of the guys almost got sucked dry because of the mosquitoes. He probably had over 100 mosquito bites on him. It was crazy. And that night, it started to get kind of cold, and I had nothing to put over me. One of the guys had given me this sweater, kind of like this sweater that they use down there. And he's like, yeah, you can use it, And I couldn't barely fit in it. I just had to put it on because I was so big. And I was just laying there, And it was kind of a crazy night. And then the next morning, early that morning, you could hear the howler monkeys in the jungle. They're just, just screaming like crazy, man. It was like, wow, this is a pretty cool experience, And we went fishing a little bit. We didn't catch anything. I caught a little fish like that big. And then from there, we left. And it was an experience, We did a lot of other things. We went fishing again later with another pastor, and I probably caught 12 fish. It was awesome. It was just one, and a bird too, even a bird too, because there were these birds trying to eat your bait that you're throwing in there because it's live bait. You throw it in there, and the bird's trying to eat it. And then they got caught up in one of the strings, and so I had to bring it out and hold his little head and take it all. I almost killed it because it was so annoying, those things. But I had mercy on it and just let it go. And it was an experience. I mean, we got to do all kinds of stuff. We got to talk to a lot of people. Got to see a lot of places. They got to see something that no tourist gets to see. The tourist goes down there, they go to the beach, and that's it. But they got to go into the real life of what it was like. And so it was really fun. I really enjoyed my time. I got to go visit some places I wanted to go visit that I've been praying about. And then the other thing that I did as well, that's a very important thing that I asked for you guys to pray about, was that I got a girlfriend. This is my first girlfriend. I've never had a girlfriend before. And I've been talking to this girl for a while, and she's from the area down there, and we really liked each other. And so I went and talked to her parents and talked to her pastor, and then I talked to her, and so she's my girlfriend. And Lord willing, I don't know, the Lord willing, maybe in June I'll go down there and ask her to marry me. And so this is a serious thing for me, so y'all pray for me, please. And I'm not going to put that in the prayer letter just because she's just my girlfriend, but I know it's a big deal, but I don't, you never know. And so you guys know that, so please pray that the Lord would open those doors and also the whole legality of everything, because she's a Mexican citizen, and so it's a big thing. And so it was awesome. I really enjoyed my time there. I could tell you more and more, but then I would take too much time. But I want to talk to you this morning about something. You would think whenever I came the first time I preached on something else, and You would think that maybe this is what I should have talked the first time as a missionary, but I didn't. And the Lord's been working in my heart about this subject. And I can't tell you a lot about what it's like to start a church because I haven't done it. And I've been to Mexico, but I haven't planted a church. I've done a little bit of work, but I can't tell you what that's like. I can't tell you what it's like to pastor a church. I can't tell you that because I don't know what it's like. But this subject that I want to talk to you about, I know what it is because I've taken part of it, and to a certain point, I'm sure you have as well, and I want to encourage you in some areas about it. And it's about giving. About giving. And you say, whoa, another missionary is coming to ask for money. No, that's not what it's about. I've learned a lot about this, and I know I'm talking to people who probably have experienced this as well, and maybe you've had trouble, but I want to talk to you about giving, especially in the area of missions. So let's go to 2 Corinthians chapter 8. 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Second Corinthians chapter 8, verse 1, it says, "Moreover, brethren, we do you to wit of the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia, how that in a great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded unto the riches of their liberality. For to their power I bear record, yea, and beyond their power they were willing of themselves, praying us with much entreaty that we would receive the gift and take upon us the fellowship of the ministering to the saints." Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask that you please bless these next few minutes, that this sermon would be a blessing to somebody here, Lord, and that this church would be a church known for its love towards missions and its giving, Lord. And I ask all these things in your precious name. Amen. One of the things that I've been learning, and you may not think much about it, but I've been learning to give. Even though I am a missionary, I've been learning to give to missions. And not just to give, but to give intentionally, and like what I'm going to speak about tonight, this morning, to give beyond my strength. Now that's a hard thing for us to kind of think about. When I go down to Mexico and I preach in churches that are poor, they don't have much, They're very unlike the churches in America. But I still talk about giving because giving is an important thing in the life of a Christian. Now, like Paul says later on in verse 8, I speak not by commandment. He's not telling you like you have to do this. I'm here to force you to give. I'm not here to do that. This is between you and God. But I want to at least try to encourage you to think of some things about giving. Some things that I've learned in the past about giving. We see here that Paul is speaking to the church of Corinthians of Corinth, and he's told them already. He's like, hey, the first letter, he's getting on to them. They're doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff, and now they're kind of coming back, and he's trying to teach them a few things in 2 Corinthians. And one of the things that he's trying to teach them in chapters 8 and chapters 9 is to give financially. And so he starts talking here, and he says, "Moreover, brethren, we do you to wit." He says, I want to show you something. We do you to wit of the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia. I want to show you, he says, the grace of God that's been over the churches in Macedonia. I want to show you what they've been doing. So apparently these churches in Macedonia were doing some great work. They were giving. They were wanting to give, and because of their giving, they were receiving the grace of God on those churches. And so Paul is like, look, I just want to show you something about these churches. And just like that, I want to show you this morning a little bit about these churches, a little bit about this giving that could change your life and change the life of this church. So he says, I want to talk to you about the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia, how that in a great trial of affliction. So these churches were not just churches that were going through a great time and they had a lot of money to give. They were going through great trials of affliction, probably a lot of persecution. They were dealing with a lot of stuff. It wasn't a simple life and an easy life for them to live. And as much as America has changed, maybe from when you were young to now, America is still a great place to live. You know, you go down to Mexico, and I look at Mexico here, it's such a different world. Such a different world. And so in America, really, we live in comfort. Even those who don't have much live in comfort compared to other places. I know because I've been to other places. But these churches, in their great trial of affliction, so they weren't just going through anything, they weren't just going through a trial, they were going through a great trial. How many of you have gone through a trial? Oh yeah, all of us. And some of you have gone through a great trial. Not just a trial, but a great trial. And these churches were going through great trials of affliction. It says the abundance of their joy. That's not something that the world can comprehend. Great trial of affliction, joy. Great trial of affliction, and yet they still had joy. What kind of mentality is that in the world? That is not something that the world sees. I've been to funerals that they have no hope. And the person that died, I've seen the wife just screaming, and crying and screaming like a crazy maniac because her husband died. They have no hope. They have no hope. They have no idea what's going to happen. And in her mind, she'll never see her husband again. The world doesn't understand that a Christian, though he may be in great trial of affliction, he can still have joy. Because joy is not depending on the circumstances around you. It's depending on God. So these churches, even though their circumstances were really bad, they still had joy. So there was churches that were in a great trial of affliction. They had joy. Okay, they had joy. And their, what does it say? Deep poverty. I want to, I don't know how this church is doing, but I would assume this church is not in deep poverty. This church is not a deeply poor church. I've been to churches in Mexico that are deeply poor, have nothing. I've seen churches like that. And there's churches around the world that are in deep poverty. And these churches not only were going through a great trial of affliction, but they were also in deep poverty. Very deep poverty. So it wasn't just that they were poor, they were like super poor. You know, in Spanish they say, no tenían ni en qué caerse muerto. In other words, they didn't even have anything to fall back on and die. They had nothing. So these churches were going through a great trial of affliction, but they had joy. They were in great poverty, in deep poverty, and abounded unto the riches. That doesn't make any sense to the world. That you have great trials and you have joy. That you are deeply poor, but you're abounding in riches? But how did all that come about? How did they get to that point? It wasn't like they won the lottery, and they just spent their money on the lottery tickets and won the lottery. It wasn't that. It's that they wanted to give. It says that their deep poverty abounded unto the riches of their liberality. For to their power, he says, for the strength I've seen in them, the power that they have, Paul says, I bear record, I've seen it, yea. And what? Beyond their power. Beyond their power, it says. They were willing of themselves. So not only were these people giving with their power that they had, but beyond their power, beyond the strength they had to do it, they were doing it. And that is why these churches in great trial of affliction had joy, and in deep poverty were abounding in riches of their liberality. Because not just were they were giving beyond what they had. They were going up and above. And that's something that a lot of Christians, unfortunately, the world nowadays, the Christian doesn't live that way. The Christian gives, and I could speak about this in all areas, not just finances, not just in giving to missions, but the Christian only gives what he can, not what's more than that. Okay, God, you want 10%? That's it. I will just give you your 10%. And hey, that's what God wants. And just like Paul says, I'm not telling you to give more. It's up between you and God. But there is something about giving sacrificially. There is something about giving just beyond your strength. Let's read verse 4 because we're going to be in other passages. It says, praying us, in other words, they're begging us, they're asking us, they're saying, hey, with much entreaty that we would receive the gift. He's like, hey, these churches are saying, please take this. We're in great trial of affliction. We're in deep poverty. We don't have much, but we want to give what we have and beyond what we have. It says, and beyond their power, that they were willing of themselves, praying with us in much entreaty that they would receive the gift, take upon us the fellowship of the ministering to the saints. So these churches were in deep poverty, they were in great trials, and yet they were giving not just their strength, but above their power. They were giving more than that. And so you would say, that's what they did. Let me tell you something, that there is something beautiful in giving beyond your strength. Because when you give beyond your strength, you are giving a sacrifice. That is sacrifice. And when you give sacrifice, that is what is worthy to give to God. Let's go to 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 24. See, this is not just something that you see in the New Testament. We see this throughout the Old Testament as well. We see here in 2 Samuel 24, verse 20. 2 Samuel 24, verse 20. It says, and Araunah, I guess that's how you say his name, and Araunah looked and saw the king and his servants coming toward him. And Araunah went out and bowed himself before the king on his face upon the ground. And Araunah said, wherefore is my lord the king come to his servant? And David said, to buy the threshing floor of thee, to build an altar unto the Lord, that the plague may be stayed from the people. So remember that at this point, David had counted the people, and there was people dying because of the pride that David had, and so he's trying to fix things. He's saying, you know what, I'm going to give sacrifice to God. So he's wanting to buy this land. And Araunah said unto David, let my lord the king take and offer up what seemeth good unto him. Behold, here be oxen for burnt sacrifice, and threshing instruments, and other instruments of the oxen for wood. All these things said Araunah as a king, give unto the king. And Araunah said unto the king, the Lord thy God accept thee. And the king said unto Araunah, nay, but I will surely buy it of thee at a price. Neither will I offer burnt offerings unto the Lord my God of that which doth what? Cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor of the oxen for 50 shekels of silver. See, David understood that when you were going to give something to God, it has to cost you something. When you want it to actually be something sacrificial, it's got to cost you. That is why when we spend time with God, it should be what costs us, not our leftovers. Nobody wants leftovers. I mean, I like food. I don't really like leftovers. I mean, I'll eat them if I have to. But I prefer a nice fresh steak that they just went out and killed the cow and just cut it off the cow and just gave it to me. I could eat it. I'd prefer that than it being in the fridge for 3 days and I got to eat it now. I prefer something fresh. And yet, Christians, we don't give to God what costs us. It was interesting, when I went down to Mexico, we were in this town called Valladolid, very pretty town. And very kind of a lot of tourists there. And so we were sitting there watching, and some people had dressed up like the ancient Mayans, and they were dancing and doing their Mayan stuff, whatever. And this guy comes over and stands next to me, and I could tell that he's from the area. He's really short kind of guy. And I start talking to him. I said something to him in Mayan. I just know a few words here and there. And so he starts talking to me. I said, so you're from the area? Yeah. I said, well, do you believe in the the ancient gods of the Mayans? He's like, well, I don't really believe that. But let me tell you, there's people that do believe that. That's a whole nother subject. But he said, yeah, I don't really believe that. But he starts telling me about aluches. And aluches, I don't know if I said this last time I was here. Aluches are this, it's a really interesting, I guess you would say kind of like a legend or whatever down there in that area. The ancient Mayans supposedly made these little clay statues, and they were called aluches. And what they would do is they would put spirits inside of them, and these clay statues would actually protect their lands. And they would play tricks on people and mess with people, and if you wanted to try to, go steal somebody's property or take fruit from their property, whatever. They would mess with you and trick you and do all kinds of things to you. And so these alushas are very famous down there in those areas. Everybody knows about the alushas. And so the people still to this day actually there's still ceremonies that you can do to make alushas to protect your lands. They still believe in that stuff. And so this guy was telling me, he's like, yeah, he was telling me about the alushas. He has some land. And he's like, yeah, the alushas, they protect my property. They take care of it. And then he told me, he said, and we give them food. We have to give them, I guess, kind of like an offering. We give them food. As a matter of fact, he said, we have to give them food first before we eat of that food. First we give it to them, and then we'll eat of it. If we don't do it that way, they won't take care of our land. And I found that so interesting, that these people would be willing to give from their first fruits to these demonic beings that have no power. But Christians can't give to God what costs them. That Christians would not be willing to go out of their way to say, God, this cost me something. What do I mean by that? Well, in my church, I give a certain amount a month. And maybe you have a set amount. That's between you and God. And I try to give more than that. And I have a friend I was talking to one time, and he said, that he gives a certain amount every month. I said, look, he's married, he's got a company, and he's got his wife and a little girl. I said, look, it's good that you give to missions, that you give that to missions. But I want to encourage you, I said. If $50 a month is all you, that is what you can give, and it doesn't really cost you much, here's $50, that's fine. If $52 is a little bit more than what you can give, then, this is going to cost me something. That is what is really giving to God sacrificially. Now, I'm not telling you have to give thousands and thousands. Jesus wasn't impressed by those that gave thousands. He was impressed by a widow woman that gave all she had. Everything she had, she gave it to God. And that was what impressed him. Not that those that gave thousands. It was how she gave and the heart she had to give. So I'm not telling you that you have to give a whole bunch of money. What I'm saying is, if you can give something just enough that costs you, that is sacrificial to God. But we tend to go to God and, all right, God, here's your leftovers, my leftovers, and here, I just want to give this to you, and thank you for everything you've done for me, even though everything we have is His. And the world out there is crazy that they would prefer to people will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for their entertainment. And Christians can't go out of their way to help a missionary and give a little more to missions. Let me tell you that a church that takes care of missionaries is a blessed church. And if this church will continue on the path it's going, and we'll take on a missionary, we'll take on and say, you know what, we're going to give, and we're going to, even though we may not be that great, we may not have that much money, we may not have that much people, we are going to give what costs us something. That is sacrifice. And let me say that when I came last time, you guys helped me, you guys gave me a love offering, and the months that you guys have given me, you don't know the encouragement that is for me. Because I have a lot of churches that tell me they'll help me, and they don't help me. So you don't know the encouragement it is to know that Beacon Baptist Church is helping me out to continue on the road. That's a big deal for me. Because I'm not worthy. I don't deserve anything. I don't deserve anything. I went to a church one time. All I did was show up. I just showed up on a Wednesday night. I didn't know the people. I didn't have a meeting. I just showed up. And it was kind of like a contemporary church. They had drums and all kinds of weird, they didn't have the King James. It was kind of different. I didn't know that. I just kind of showed up. But they loved missionaries. And they gave me a love offering. Even though I did nothing. All I did was show up. They wanted to help me out, and they gave that to me. And that is an encouragement to me. Because they didn't have to do any of that. They did it out of love. So when you give, and I'm saying this, I know I'm a missionary, and I live off of what churches give me. I don't work secularly. I live off of what churches give me. But I try to do the same thing. Because how dare I go tell people to give, and I don't give? And, well, I don't believe you, brother. Well, you can go talk to my pastor and talk to the missions guy at my church, and they'll tell you. I give. Because I care. Now, especially in this position that I'm in, I know what it's like. And there's something about when I just give, God, I don't know when I'm going to get money. I don't know where it's going to come from. But I'm going to give this, even though it's going to cost me, because I want to be a blessing to the missionaries that we take care of. That is given sacrificially. And David understood, if I'm going to give something to God, it's going to cost me. That is worthy. That is what God was worthy to give to God. Let's go to Malachi chapter 1. Malachi chapter 1. It's the last book of the Old Testament. Some people call it Malachi. Some people call it Malachi, however you want to call it. I think Brother Pastor Hunter calls it Malachi, he's a Georgian. Chapter 1, verse 6. Malachi chapter 1, verse 6. It says, a son honoreth his father. Is not God our Father? Amen. And a servant his master. Is Jesus not our master, our Lord? If then I be a father, where is my honor? And if I be a master, where is my fear? And saith the Lord of hosts unto you, O priests that despise my name. And ye say, wherein have we despised thy name? Ye offer polluted bread upon my altar. And ye say, wherein have we polluted thee? And that ye say, the table of the Lord is contemptible. And if ye offer the blind for sacrifice, is it not evil? And if ye offer the lame and sick, is it not evil? Offer it unto thy governor. Will he be pleased with thee? Or accept thy person, saith the Lord of hosts? See, this is something that we look at Israel and we say, well, look at Israel. They were giving horrible sacrifices to God. God wanted the perfect things. God wanted the beautiful things. He wanted the things that weren't lame and sick and blind. He wanted it to be spotless. But they were taking the lame and the sick and the blind and, just like, oh, you know what? This is what we're going to give to God. We're going to give it to God. And the problem is not that God was egotistical and, oh, no, I want you to give me the best. It was that was a picture of Jesus Christ. That was to show the perfection of Jesus. And when they were taking those animals that were blind and sick and dying, they were twisting that picture and destroying it. And they didn't want to give their best to God. And we can look back at Israel and say, oh, Israel's such a bad thing. But that's what we do. We don't give our best to God. We don't give what costs us to God. We don't give the best to God, the most beautiful things to God. We give Him what's our leftovers. You can give to missions. That's fine. That's between you and God. Like I said, I'm not here to tell you what to do. But when you give, it ought to be sacrificially. It ought to be the best you have. Because that is what God is worthy of. Is He not? Is He not worthy of the best that we have? And when you give, and listen, you say, well, Brother Yates, I don't have a lot of money. I'm not telling you to give a lot of money. I'm telling you to give sacrificially, to give the best you have. Well, I don't know where God's going to take care of you. I know God's going to take care of you. He's taking care of me. This trip that I had, that I just did, I spent a lot more money than I thought. It was a lot of gas. The gas in Mexico is almost $5, so it's like crazy. Like, it's really bad. And so I spent a lot more money than I thought I was going to spend. And so while I was down there, honestly, I was worried. I was like, man, I don't know where I'm going to get money from. I need to be careful, and I was just worried. And one day we went out with this pastor. There's a pastor, and the guys that were with me, my girlfriend went, so we were all hanging out. We went swimming somewhere, beautiful place, and then afterwards we were talking, and this pastor told us a story. And I thought, that story that he told us, I really needed to hear it. And he started telling us that there was a guy in his church that was a lawyer. And he got saved, and he got rid of the lawyer stuff, and he started kind of doing little, contracting work here and there, just little stuff here to take care of his family, and he wanted to be involved in church and wanted to do more for the Lord. And sometimes he had money, and sometimes he didn't. And so happened that one day he had no money. This guy had no money. And that morning he had nothing to give his family to eat. Nothing. And he went outside and he started to pray, and he was just praying, like, God, I need you to take care of me. And this is down in Mexico. And the guy says that all of a sudden he sees this dog. And because in Mexico there's just dogs everywhere. He sees this dog walking around the corner. And he's kind of coming towards his brother. And the dog had this bag hanging from his mouth, He's just holding on to it. And he starts walking towards the guy. The guy thought, he grabbed the bag of trash, And he was going to scare the dog off, and then he realized that inside of that bag there was another bag, the plastic bag. The dog started walking over to him. He kind of looked in there, and it was a grilled chicken. He said it was a grilled chicken with all the condiments and everything that they have down there. It's well known. Everybody likes grilled chicken. And the dog hadn't even torn the bag open to eat it. That's not normal. Dogs don't do that, especially those dogs that are dying of starvation down there. He brought the bag up to the guy. The guy takes the bag, opens it up, sees the grilled chicken in there, takes it inside. Him and his whole family eat that day. And they give the bones to the dog. And God took care of that man. Man, when he told me that story, I remember thinking, I really needed to hear that. Because I don't know where it was going to come from, and I don't know what was going to happen, but God was going to have to take care of me. And he did. And I just think about that story. I'm not even worthy of a dog bringing a grilled chicken in his mouth to me to eat. I'm not even worthy of that. And God takes care of his children. So you think, well, I don't know, Brother Yates. That's why he says, try me. Try me. Trust me. And the only way you can trust me is by doing it. Remember the lady that took her perfume. That was the most precious thing she had to give to Jesus. I wonder sometimes if we really give our most precious things to God. Remember John 3:16, what does it say? For God so what? Loved, right? That he what? Gave. God showed us that when you love, you give. And you can't love without giving. When you love, you give. And the most precious thing that God had was his only Son. And he gave that to us. So when we give to missions, it's not about the missionary. It's about the people that can know Christ because you're helping that missionary to get going. And all the work that I did down there in Mexico this time, all the people I got to speak to, you have a part in that. It's like Paul said, it's not that I desire a gift, but fruit that may abound to your account. There's something I read the other day. It says, if you want to be rich, give. If you want to be poor, grasp. If you want abundance, scatter. If you want to be needy, hoard. A man there was, and some did count him mad, because the more he gave, the more he had. We are blessed. God blesses us. He takes care of us so that we can be a blessing to others. I'm not talking about this Joel Osteen stuff. All right? I'm talking about when you give to God, God's going to take care of you. And it's not always finances. But God will take care of you if it means a dog is going to come with a grilled chicken in his mouth to give you something to eat. He's going to take care of you. It is much better, the Lord said, Jesus said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. There's a church I went to, and I'll just say this quickly. I went to this church, and this church, I remember growing up, we visited it a few times, and it was a church that was probably running 40 or 50, and they just called me just recently, and hey, we want you to come by to our missions conference. And the missions conference didn't end up happening. It was kind of a long story, but the guy that was there over the church, it wasn't the pastor. He was just in charge. He was a pastor of another church, but he was helping this church. So I went to this church. I hadn't been there for years, so I remember seeing it. And it's a lot smaller than I remember. I thought it was a lot bigger because I was little. And I went in there, and the people, they didn't have any people almost anymore. The church is dying. And the Sunday service we had, there was 3 people. Grandma, a great-grandma, a grandma, and their niece, a little girl. Or a granddaughter, I mean. And then there was a guy in the back that was like an agnostic guy. I don't even know why he was there. And then the people in charge. And the guy that was in charge, he told me, yeah, I met you guys years ago. I met your parents years ago. My parents are missionaries. And back in 94 or something like that, 95, I wasn't alive yet. He said, your parents came by our church. They called us, hey, we're going to come by. They didn't even have enough money to put gas in for the next 50 miles. They had no money. They had no food. They had nowhere to stay. So the pastor at that time said, hey, brother so-and-so, this guy that I'm talking to, go take care of them. Give them some money, put them in a hotel, give them food and stuff. They took care of my parents and got them going to the next place. And when he told me that, it maybe didn't seem much to him, but it was a lot to me. It meant a lot to me that a church would go out of their way to help my parents so that my parents could get to the next place. And that my parents are still going today. They're still missionaries. That somebody would go out of their way to help you, you don't even deserve that. It encourages you to keep going. So when we give, we ought to give sacrificially. We ought to give our best. We ought to give the most precious things that we have to God, especially when we're talking about missions. And look, maybe you give $20 a month. I want to encourage you to give just a little more. Just enough that it costs you. And see the great things that God will do when you give. Jesus said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. And that is the message, I guess in summary, that I want to give to you. That it is more blessed to give than to receive. And this church, with the help of the people that is here, that are going to help Pastor Hunter, that are going to go out outreach, and they're going to give to missions, this church is going to do something great. I know some churches, they're not big churches, but they're well-known churches because they are churches that give. There are churches that God has blessed because they give. I went to a church in Washington. It was a Spanish church. Well, it was an English church, but it had a Hispanic department. The Hispanic department was probably running like 600 people. It was big. But they're big into missions. And they told me, yeah, we used to not do this like missions before, and it was a lot different. But when we started doing missions, this church, God blessed this church. So if there's anything I know, and there's anything I can tell you about missions and mission work, it's that when you give, God's going to bless you. And God will take care of you. If that means a dog is going to walk up to you with a grilled chicken in his mouth that you can eat, well, so be it. Jesus said it is more blessed to give than it is to receive. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father,